Happy Friday. I realized that I did not make a Wednesday video. So this is going to count for both. I'm going to talk about Tuesday through today, Friday. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we worked with David Horan, who's a director here, and he specialized with Brian Friel's work. And so we mainly looked at Dancing at Lunasa, which is probably his most famous play. But then before that, we actually looked at another one of his plays called Philadelphia, Here I Come. And in Philadelphia, Here I Come, there's a character that has both his public and his private persona on stage. The character is Gar, and there's a Gar public and a Gar private. So basically, there's an inner monologue and then the external. And we played around with that scene and just like the different ways you can portray the inner and how it affects the outer. And we did a lot of exercises, and we did a reverse where we only used the public lines for Gar, and then the female character in which the scene we looked at, Kate, his ex-girlfriend, we attributed her a person to act as her private thoughts, which isn't written in the script. And it's interesting because once the next day we brought that exercise on to Dancing at Lunasa, and so we had a scene with like all 5 of the sisters in the show, and we had mostly men actually standing behind us acting as our inner monologue, and they had to speak the intention before we delivered the lines. And it was a really, really interesting exercise in how to get from inner thought to word. And that's kind of what David was talking about. He was like, as actors, it's our job to do both. Be the private and the public persona of these characters. To have those inner thoughts that present themselves in the way we present the spoken word, but sometimes really flat performances lack that inner monologue. It's just people saying words in a particular way, and it's not actually like the thought that connects the sentences together and the intention. So that was really helpful, and he was very interesting to work with. I feel like the directors we work with just keep getting better and better, because on Thursday and Friday, the last 2 days, we worked with a young female director named Una Murphy, and she is by far my favorite so far. And we looked at By the Bog of Cats by Marina Carr and Connor McPherson's work. So she specializes a lot in like 90s plays, but she also does a lot of like new work, and she works with some big houses like the Abbey and the Gate Theater. And she's amazing. I learned a lot from her. And I was also really inspired just by her presence as like a young female director, because I've been looking a lot at directing lately and like possibly getting into that. And I talked to her about it, and after the first session of looking at By the Bog of Cats, we were walking out of the building together, and I was like, I have an interest in directing, and she was like, yeah, I could tell by your input in class that you have very much like a director brain. Like, you seem like you'd be good at it, and you should explore it if it so tickles you. So that was some really nice encouragement. But with the Bog of Cats, we did like a physical exercise where we picked a duologue, and we had to incorporate physical movement into it in like an abstract way. So we had to push or pull our partner. It didn't just have to be like a push or a pull. It was like any type of push or pull, any physical contact that signified a push or a pull. And so I, with a male classmate, did a scene between Hester and her dead brother Joseph, and I would say ours was probably the most physical, because I took it that as be extremely physical, because I understood why she was having us do it. And a lot of people in the class tended to just kind of do a scene with slight touching, but like I wrapped my body around him at one point and was like pulling him as tight to me as I possibly could. And like after, because we each showed what we had worked on, and after me and him showed our work, she was like, okay, now I want you to stand on complete opposite sides of the room and keep that physical muscle memory, but deliver the lines without touching. And it really was interesting. And like the energy still kept up for sure. And I, sometimes I think the thing that she said that most impacted me was that people often say the opposite of how they feel, both in real life and in plays, because it mimics life. And so like a lot of the lines that Hester gives, she's like, get out of here, but really she's wanting to pull people closer to her. And so it was interesting experimenting with that, and I really took that and worked it into the work, and it gave it a whole different depth that I just didn't see upon first or second or third read. And so I really liked that exercise. And so then today, Friday, we worked on The Weir by Conor McPherson, which is such an interesting show. And so we read through the first half of it with questions and such, and then the second half of the time with her today, we worked on the monologues, the last 3 monologues in the show. And one of them is like a really famous monologue by Valerie, but it's also like notoriously difficult because it's her talking about how her daughter dies, and then she like hears her on the phone after she dies in some supernatural way. And like it's clearly like the first time she's ever said this whole story out loud to anybody that wasn't like her husband. And so it was about like the way Una explained it, she's like, it's a slow release of air. Like you have to make it to the end, but not fall into the emotionality of it, which is where I can see like when certain people were reading it, because we did like a round table read of it, they really were like, oh, oh, and you clearly like, you can't just play sad. That defeats the purpose of the text. Like it's about having, and like the sad part, it falls in the middle when the child actually dies, but the like is the supernatural bit at the end where she hears her on the telephone. And so like getting through it is interesting. It was a really interesting exercise in like monologue stamina. And I just really loved working with her because she's really about relationships between the characters. And I know that's what you're always striving for, and especially in an ensemble show, but I feel like sometimes because we're trained on the individual level, most of the time it's hard to remember that plays don't happen in a vacuum. You're not just existing in this vacuum alongside other humans. You're in this setting and in these circumstances together as a group when you're on stage. And while I'm a fairly reactive actress, and I try to give energy to whoever else is speaking or whatever, sometimes it's easy to fall into the pit of like, well, how am I feeling? How does this affect me? And not, what is my relationship to each character on the stage at this point in time? And so that was a really great exercise in that, because when we were working on these monologues, we still had all the other characters on stage, because throughout the show, everyone is pretty much on stage. And it really impacts the way you give this monologue, because it's not a soliloquy to the audience. It's a storytelling show. So it's the character telling the story to their friends and a stranger. And so that was a really interesting look at like storytelling monologues in the context of a play, and not just how they exist in a vacuum. And she said she doesn't use monologues for her auditions for that reason, because it's really hard to show how you as an actor connect through the story, because especially with some of these monologues, which are commonly done here for auditions, like they don't exist in this vacuum. They're very much determinate of the company that they're with. So it was great. It was a really good week for script analysis. We mostly did script analysis. We had one movement class and one dialect class, which I'm getting better at. It's still hard to do we've learned like 3 different colloquial dialects, but I'm getting better. And that's all that counts. So this is the end of the second week, so I'm halfway through this course. And I feel really good about it. I had a few rough days at week 1, but ultimately, like, I feel a lot better now. I'm a lot happier. I'm actually enjoying the work a lot more now. And I'm excited to explore Dublin this weekend, because I haven't really gotten out to see much of it yet, because I've been at school all day, or I was in Cork last weekend. So I'm really excited to spend some time with my classmates and get to know them a bit better. And yeah, it's been good work, and I'm keeping up really well with it, and it's fun. It's been really fun. I've been having a really good time and just kind of giving it my all. And it's really made me see that this is what I do want to do. And like, I've always known that. But the more I work on it and the more I allow myself to enjoy it, the more I see like this is where I kind of belong. Like, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. So, I'll see you Monday.